You're watching Cable 2.
Welcome to the Winston-Salem Forsyth School System COVID-19 Subcommittee meeting. This meeting is virtual. We want to explain the purpose of the virtual meeting. We had a gifted meeting today with our parents. That meeting was virtual. We also have a Spanish town hall meeting, a Hispanic town hall meeting for our parents shortly after this. So to accommodate all the schedules involving Board of Education members, this meeting is being held virtually. I'll turn the meeting over now to the chairperson, Marilyn Parker.
Good afternoon. Thanks to everyone who is joining us. And we welcome you to this COVID committee meeting. Dr. Harrison, do you want me to do the roll call or do you want to do that?
Oh, I'm glad to do it. I'm glad to do it for you. Okay. Marilyn Parker, Chair.
Present.
Andrea Bramer. Deanna Kaplan.
Present.
Dana Jones.
I think Ms. Jones is going to be joining us later. She has a class.
Okay. And Ms. Motzinger, Elizabeth Motzinger.
Present.
Okay. We do have a quorum. Thank you.
Yes, and I do think we have some other board members joining us. I think I saw Leah Crowley, and I think I also saw Chair Woodbury. Do we have any other board members? If you are, please chime in. We're glad to have you with us as well.
Yes, Board Member Parker. This is Barbara Burke. I'm glad to.
Okay, great, Ms. Burke. I'm glad you're on there on the call as well. Any other board members? Okay, and we also recognized some of us were planning to maybe go to the education building. We recognize that we've got some teachers there. Due to some safety concerns, we were advised to close the education building for our meeting. But we do thank those people who are there at the education building for voicing their concerns, and we just want everybody there that's involved to please be safe and to be kind and respectful. At this time, we will go into discussion items, and the first discussion item that we have is an athletics update from Tricia McManus, our Deputy Superintendent. Ms. McManus.
Okay, I am here, and let me get the PowerPoint started from the beginning. Are you able to see that okay and hear me?
We are able to see the, it is not the start, it may be the start of it, yes, but we can see it.
Okay, we're going to start with an athletics update.
Tricia,
Yes.
Tricia, hang on, that's not your screen. I think it's showing your second screen or something. Let's,
it is?
Bring your PowerPoint up. Bring your PowerPoint up at the bottom there.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. I didn't think that was the beginning of her. Okay, there you go now.
Hey, Tricia, you see that box that says use presenter view right up there at the top right, sort of top, very top. Go to the other side to the right. Use presenter view as a check box. Keep coming to your right. Keep coming. A little more to the right. Now go down right there. Uncheck that. Now go slideshow. Go slideshow.
Thank you. Okay, I was wondering why that happens sometimes to me, so thank you. Good lesson. So let me do from beginning.
Okay, hang on, Tricia.
Yeah.
I don't think, try that use presenter view again, try to check it, because ours is still not full size.
So check it.
Check it, I think. Now let's
Let me try this again.
I'm the one telling you because I'm not the techno queen by any means. So, well, it's still not large. Probably needs technology, Kevin, to help you again.
Let me do it again real quick because I usually don't have a problem with my PowerPoint. So hold on one sec. I'm going to go back in and do it again. Let's see. All right. Can you, all right, is it working at this point or no?
No. Kevin.
What happened to the rest of you?
He said take off the
Yeah.
interview.
I'll try it again.
Okay.
Let's see.
Can you see it?
We see the beginning. We don't see the whole.
Yeah.
If I turn it, can you see the next slide?
Yes.
Yes, it actually is working, Ms. McManus. If you look to the right, board members, the left is just a review. If you look to the
Right.
right, it'll show the full size. It's working.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, we're good. We can
All
see it. Okay.
I hear somebody, I'm wondering, okay, so we're gonna get started. So first of all, thank you everybody for some time this evening. Come in. Kevin's here in case they can see this side too, so hold on one second. I wanna make sure. Yeah, but it usually, yeah, I'll just let them see the both sides, it's fine.
Hello.
Hey, Andy.
Hi, Ms.
Okay,
Brenner. I'll check you down.
welcome, Miss Bramer.
Thank you, thank you. I got home and had children waiting. So can you hit the door?
Let me hit it just one more.
We're trying to pull up the first presentation, so that's where we are. You haven't missed anything at this point.
Share the screen.
Yeah, I would just let me put it in my desktop. Instead of that,
Try it.
and then let's do from the
Just-
beginning.
just go to
Okay, we'll just go with it.
Put that out there and just-
There
Okay.
you go. That's good. That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kevin, thank you. Sorry about that, guys, sorry for the little bit of a delay. I use PowerPoints, I think, every day, so not sure why that happened, of course, this time. So thank you very much. So we're gonna get started with an athletics update. And I did want to start by recognizing John Sullivan, our Director of Athletics. He's on the call, and the Athletics Committee, because we've been able to roll out our athletic program very smoothly with the conditioning, the voluntary conditioning and workouts. And so that's a thanks to John and the Athletics Committee. So as we get started, here is the current state of athletics right now. We actually began our voluntary workouts on August 3rd, and we're currently in phase 3. So we moved from working out, smaller groups, no equipment, to now phase 3, which means that we've added more students to our groupings, and we've actually added equipment. And 7 of our 15 sports are actually conducting these off-season workouts at this time. And something that is, yes.
Ms. Mans, you want to go to your first, we're just seeing athletics update. I think that information's on your first page if you want to scroll to us so we can see that at the same time. Thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I did.
Yeah, I didn't realize it hadn't moved.
Yeah, it had.
Board Member Parker, you can see it now?
Nope, not yet.
All right. Now?
No.
So the slide's not. All right, let me do one more thing, guys. I'm really sorry. I'm going to actually restart this because.
Tricia, I have your presentation up if you'd like me to drive for you.
Okay, let's do that. I'm not sure why I'm having the problems, but I appreciate that.
I'm sorry, Ms. McManus, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I knew you made those slides nicely for us to see, so.
Thank you.
I wanted us to be able to see them.
I appreciate that very much. Okay, so here we go to the second one. There we go. Yay, Lauren to the rescue. Thank you, Lauren. All right, so basically, I was our coaches and athletes are taking this opportunity very seriously. And as a result, we are making great progress as far as maintaining safety with our student athletes. So right now, we are having groups of 50 outdoors and 25 indoors, and we have moved to the use of equipment, which was all part of phase 3. On the next slide, it shows some of the NCHSAA updates. And basically, November 4th is the official first day of practice, meaning we've been in voluntary off-season workouts, and now we go to the official first day of practice according to the NCHSAA. And so that will be with volleyball and cross country. And our first competition is scheduled to occur, and this is based on, again, NCHSAA guidelines, but it's scheduled for the week of November 16th. That's when they've approved for first competition dates to occur. We have received finalized detailed plans for all 15 sports at this time, and guidance for when those sports should start with their official season and when their competition season should be held. And then also, if you look at the very last bullet here, the NCHSAA is following the governor's orders of 100 spectators outdoors and 25 indoors. And I will tell you, our committee is working on what that might look like if we do end up playing or competing. These are the details that have to be worked out. And I will tell you, families will be the priority if we do compete, so they can see their student athletes playing this year. And so next slide, it's going to show what our next steps are with athletics. You can see that we have golf, men's tennis, women's soccer, and softball. They will actually begin their off-season workouts in December. And then the next group of sports, baseball, women's tennis, track field, wrestling, will begin January 11th. Again, these are off-season workouts. And what we're working on now, and we have not started yet, we haven't started back the use of weight rooms and locker rooms because we've really been waiting on the right training for the foggers and the purchasing of the electrostatic foggers, which has happened. We just now have to provide the training, and then our next step would be to propose workouts with weights. And that is because as our athletes start to actually compete, we think it's important for their safety to make sure they've had the proper, not only working out as they've been doing, but also some of that weight training that really helps them to get ready for their competitions. And so that's where we are with our next steps. And I'm going to stop here to see if there are any questions about athletics before we go into the next part of the presentation around reopening.
Board members, does anyone have a question?
I have raised my hand, Ms. Parker.
Okay.
I see and I'm not on the committee, but I do have a question about where does dance teams and cheerleading fall in this, or even marching band? I know I don't know which ones actually come under the umbrella of the NCHSAA, but just trying to make sure we're being consistent school to school with all those extracurriculars.
Absolutely. And so we've been meeting, those groups have been meeting as well. And I will tell you, earlier in the school year, when I met with Mr. Oliver, those groups had been starting their practices virtually. And so we need to get you an update on if they've started to come back yet. But I do know that their seasons were going to be comparable to when they actually perform. So band with football, since they perform at those half times, same with dance. But we can get you, we'll get you a follow-up email with the exact details about our dance and our band. Cheerleading has already started, by the way.
Okay, and I know some are doing virtual, but some schools it seems like are meeting virtually and in person, and others have been just virtual. And I just know some of these kids are looking for some social interaction, and this could really help, especially if we can do it safely.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Board members, anyone else have a question? Lauren, I can't, for some odd reason, I'm not seeing, mine's not showing hands. Can you see hands up, Lauren, when you're doing that?
It is showing at the bottom for some reason today.
Mine's not showing at all.
Okay.
And so if somebody can
I
help me
don't
with
see any up,
that.
Miss Parker.
Okay, good. If you just help me with that, and if mine pops back up, that would be wonderful. But I can't, at this point, I'm not able to see hands. Okay. Any other questions regarding the athletics presentation? Okay, Ms. McManus, we go right on to school readiness for reopening update.
Okay, thank you so much again for this time. And this next section of the presentation is hopefully going to paint a very clear picture about the preparation that our schools have taken to be ready for the return of students. And just like I described with our student athletes and our coaches, our schools are taking reopening and the return of students very, very seriously as well. And so what you're going to see in this next presentation is a lot of different areas that our schools have thought through and planned for. And I can tell you preparation is going to be the key to a successful implementation. And that's why we've spent many hours. And I'll tell you, actually since the beginning of the school year, because when we thought we were going to open in Plan B, we were preparing, and then we moved to Plan C, and we kind of moved over and were really focused on making sure students were learning effectively remotely. And now we jumped right back into the plans after about the first 3 to 4 weeks. And so our principals, our school teams have been literally, and our district team has been working around the clock to make sure we're ready. So I'm going to share with you on the next few slides some of what we've been doing. So Lauren, next. So this first slide is really going to let you know some general things that we focused on. Every school received a checklist that they needed to follow for reopening. And I think a couple of board meetings ago, Dr. Harrison pulled that checklist up for you. Every school was then audited using the checklist. And so our facilities managers went and walked through each school, and they gave each school feedback in any areas that needed to be addressed. They are now going back to make sure those areas have been addressed before students come back. Also, all schools have attended training, and we've offered this week alone, we have 5 screening trainings offered, and that is for every person that's going to be screening students as they enter campus. That's a very detailed training, a very extensive training. We have designated holding space training. We've had COVID coordinator training. And then the last bullet is really important. We have met with principals pretty much every Wednesday since the start of the school year to actually give guidance around very specific areas of facilities, instructions, cleaning schedules, contact tracing. And so all of these areas have been addressed for the last several months in preparation of students returning. So in the next slide, I'm going to start with some facilities. And as I explain some of these slides, I'm going to talk a little bit about what we are holding tight and then what we're holding loose. And when I say that, what I mean is in the tight, that means that this is how it has to be done. This is what has to be done, and this is how it has to be done. In the loose, it's still going to be tight. This is what has to be done. But in the loose, we give schools an opportunity to take their own context into consideration. What does their school look like? What is their facility? How is it designed? And how many staff members do they have to be able to screen? And so where the loose comes in is to actually contextualize the guidelines and make sure that it's working for each individual school. So as you can see on the facilities expectation slide, you can see that these are all the areas that there is no choice. These are things that had to be done. Every school had to have all their floors marked for social distancing in the hallways and throughout the schools. Students had to, all desks in classrooms have to be 6 feet apart. There is no exception to that. Anything that was extra in classrooms, from carpets to couches to personal items, we removed all of that. And in many cases, it's all in what didn't get taken home by our teachers. It's in common spaces at this point in some of our schools. And then cleaning throughout the building. So all of our custodians, there is training that is happening so that they will be cleaning throughout the day. And so every school will have a schedule that is assigning custodians to be cleaning high-touch areas throughout the day. PPE was given to every school. Set PPE, from hand sanitizer to face masks for every student, to coverings for those that are in the holding space, and more. And I know that you've heard from Lauren many times about what PPE has been delivered. It's been an ongoing process, but it has been delivered at this point. And then the designated holding space. we are very clear and detailed about what that space needed to look like and how it was to be managed. And so all of the things on this slide are very tight. And where you might find something loose is, even though student desks have to be 6 feet apart, the way a classroom might be organized with a kidney table for smaller group instruction or other things like that, it can be actually customized. And I will tell you, our classrooms, the ones I've been out to look at, our schools are working really hard to make them inviting for students. We want students to return to a positive and pleasant environment amidst all the challenges they're actually facing. So next.
Oh, excuse me,
There's a hand up. I will stop you.
We have, Tricia, we have 2 questions. We have Deanna Kaplan and Chair Woodbury.
Thank you. Yes,
Can
ma'am.
you see them now, Ms. Parker? It just came up for me. You're muted, Ms. Parker.
No, I'm still not being able to see those, and even when I do my participants, it doesn't show them. So
Okay, what I'll do, Ms. Parker, is if we have questions, I'll text you. So right now we have Board Member Kaplan and Board Member Woodbury.
Okay,
yes.
great, thank you.
Thank you. So I have a couple of questions about the cleaning. Well, first of all, the ventilation systems in those 11 schools, has that been replaced? Has that been fixed?
So I'm going to defer that. Dr. Hairston or Lauren, can you all or someone else address that question? If those have been fixed? I know they were scheduled to be before kids returned.
They were scheduled to be completed by October 23rd. And everything is still underway to meet that date, and we will be prepared for the 26th when our first group at the moment is scheduled to return.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
The other question is, under facilities expectations, you have cleaning throughout the building of high-touch areas all day. I know that there were several teachers that reached out to us concerned that they would be required to clean the bathrooms, this, that, and the other, and I was just wondering if you could be clear about what their responsibilities are for cleaning. And then lastly, just, is there a checklist with all of the schools to make sure that all of these schools are well cleaned? I mean, we've all, as board members, I think we've received some emails with pictures of bugs and paper clips and this kind of thing that hasn't been addressed. So just wondered if you could just help everybody to feel good about it. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So I will address the first part of this because just last week on the teacher advisory, I did address this, and then I'm going to let Lauren address the cleaning part of that question. But what we've asked teachers, no, we are not asking teachers to every time a student comes out of the bathroom if the bathroom is in their classroom, to go in and clean the bathroom. That is they're not going to be able to do that and teach their class. And so basically what we have said to teachers and what I described last week is, what we have to do is get our procedures very tight in our classrooms. And so before students walk in the bathroom, hand sanitizer should be used before they touch the door, and after they use the restroom, when they come out, wash hands, hand sanitizer again. And so that is one thing. The other is about hourly. They are going to have spray. It's not going to be they're going to go in, clean the toilet, wash the sinks down. They're going to have a spray, like a spray that is going to be a disinfectant spray that basically what we think is best practice is every hour to go in as they're circulating around the room, go in and just spray it down each hour. The same thing will happen if there are common area restrooms in schools or gang bathrooms, whatever we want to call those. And that is that students should be, as before they go in, hand sanitizer. When they come out, wash hands and hand sanitizer. And also at that point, each hour a custodian would go. That would be considered a high touch area. And so each hour custodians would go to actually provide the spray down and the cleaning of those areas. So no, so I think I would look at it as my classroom is similar to my home and the same type of care you would take or with your own children. You're not going to be walking in and cleaning the bathroom after each child, but you would be keeping an eye and probably just spray it like once each hour. But the biggest thing is making sure kids maintain those cleaning of their hands, and always they'll be wearing their mask in and out of the restroom. And so, Lauren, did you want to address the cleaning with the custodians in the classrooms?
I certainly can. Thank you for sharing that information about the restrooms. We have provided in a few of the trainings that we've done a generic schedule chart. We've kept it generic so that the schools can fill in various areas throughout their building, whether it be a media center or a gym, a cafeteria, or even a restroom. And then it has time intervals on it. We've left it in a format that is adjustable, so that they could do 15-minute intervals for a certain space depending on how that space is being used. As Tricia mentioned, the recommendation for the restrooms would be on the hour, and then an individual can sign off on those areas, and that would be a form that the custodians would use to be able to target those spaces throughout the day. That is an area that we did leave loose as far as setting the increments throughout the different spaces, because we know that each school has a slightly different schedule structure of how the students will move around the building or stay, contained in a cohort. And so we wanted them to feel like they had the flexibility to schedule that the way they felt was best for their students. And then additionally for custodial staff, presently for our current Plan B model, we know that high schoolers will be coming back later. And so what we've been working with principals on the last 2 weeks is to reposition custodial staff into our elementary and our middle schools to provide them some additional support as those students begin to return in the next couple of weeks, so that targeted cleaning, that repetitive cleaning of those high-touch surfaces can take place. And additionally, we've been talking to our contractors. We do have several schools that have contracted custodial services. We've been speaking with them about making adjustments in the sweeping and mopping of classrooms and some other areas of the scope of work to be able to target the areas that are important to the cleaning related to COVID-19. And you will most likely see some language from us coming in November for some contract adjustments to ensure that all that is captured appropriately.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Kaplan, does that conclude your questions?
Yes, and just is there a process if you have an educator in one of our buildings who is really seeing some issues with the cleanliness of the building, and she or he have they been encouraged to reach out to get it corrected?
I would like to respond to that. I guess so every school has a planning team with the principal, and we have asked principals and teachers to work together. So, out of respect for the principal, if I were a teacher or an employee, I would go to the principal and express concerns. And every school has an area superintendent. So primarily what I do when I receive those emails is I send them right to the area superintendents who get right on top of calling the principal and addressing the concern. So we're truly trying to work together. I would hope that folks will go to the principals. There's a planning team. They're working very hard. And I would certainly, but that's the process. It's
Okay,
start
great.
with the planning team, go to your area superintendent, and that's how we're resolving the issues. And most people are getting right on top of it. And I would like to say that, addressing the teacher, cleaning the areas, certainly if teachers feel uncomfortable, we are accommodating them and working with them. So that's one of those negotiable things that we work with on how to best do it with the sprayers and all. And if people still feel uncomfortable, then we certainly will go in and do some work with them.
That's great. Thank you. I just wanted to address some of the concerns that we've been hearing. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I think Chair Woodbury, I think you were next with a question.
Yes. So I think that Board Member Kaplan sort of touched on the question I had around, could we clarify what the expectations are of teachers? But what I would tell professional educators, whether they be certified or classified, is that upon, I'm also an educator, and of course I'm on a college campus which has the highest level of infection coming from probably everywhere across the globe into the, the university system. So it's definitely that much more, I would at least say comparable to what we're dealing with by way of the risk factors. And before we could return to campus, all faculty had to go through, training. And one of the suggestions, but not mandates, because in our contracts, we clearly are, instructors and whatever else we do that's non-custodial on campus. But they highly suggested that we have, our own, personal cleaning supplies, because although the custodial staff would be in buildings cleaning as often as they could, they have, limited resources, just as we all know across, this country with trying to, accommodate this issue, if you will. But the reason why they asked us to have our own personal cleaning supplies, if you will, is because, I have to touch the surface of a keyboard, which other professors have come in there and touched it. And so, they were just very clear that in order to, move, the university forward with all consideration for all human beings on campus, things that we have not done before, we would, have to do in order to try to make, the learning environment, more safe. But I will say again, they did not mandate, but they were very clear about, coming back on campus, we would have to do some things personally as staff just to try to make the campus as safe as possible. And I think that, as Ms. McManus talked about, is, I kind of looked at it in the way of if it's my personal home space and, I'm going to, try to make sure my area that I'm teaching in is clean and making sure the area is safe for, my students in the way that because, my teaching space is, comparable to some degree to, my home space by way of how I feel about it. So I'm just going to take that kind of consideration, I think, with coming back to school. And so I just wanted to share my experience as an educator, on a college campus, different but similar, with taking some, ownership around. I just want to make sure the learning environment is as safe as possible with myself and students. But by no means did the university ever tell me you better clean, your monitor and your, keyboard before you use it. So I just wanted to make that comment. And then my question is there a difference between spraying something down but not wiping it, or was that just, maybe I heard, maybe I didn't hear correctly around how teachers are supposed to sort of disinfect? So are they just spraying the area, or will there be, a wipe down after spraying it?
And Lauren, will you explain the spray that we're going to be using? It is a spray. And so, Lauren, will you explain a little bit about that spray?
Sure. So one of the things that we provided in the trainings around disinfecting is some of the difference between cleaning, sanitizing, and disinfecting. The CDC defines those as all a little bit different. So throughout the course of the day, because the teachers are going to be focused around instruction, what we're looking for them, as Tricia explained, is, every hour or so, if the students have used the restroom, they would simply be using the bottle of disinfectant to spray it onto the surface of the sink faucet, maybe the classroom door handle, if a child has used that, or on the paper towel dispenser. That disinfectant calls for a 10-minute dwell time on the label, and so you would leave it to dwell on that surface without wiping it off. There may be other instances where an individual would want to quickly wipe something. So a keyboard, as board member Woodbury mentioned, you would not want to spray a disinfectant or a chemical of any kind onto an electronic or computer keyboard. In that situation, you would spray this same disinfectant onto a paper towel or a reusable towel, and then you would wipe the surface clean.
Okay, I think, Chair Woodbury, would that conclude your questions?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, and then I think Ms. Motzinger had a question as well.
Yes, I had two questions. Contact tracing, who's doing the contact tracing? And what kind of training have they had?
So we are actually, and that'll be on another slide, but the contact tracing is going to be under Jennifer Corso's purview, and she is actually in the process of hiring 2 contract tracers, and the contact tracing training has been done with the COVID coordinators and also the nurse extenders, which I'm excited to say we actually were able to get 20 nurse extenders. And so there is a process for the contact tracing, and Jennifer Corso is leading that work.
Okay, so
yeah.
we'll be providing it in the district and not
Yes.
counting on the health department, although I'm assuming positive cases will get reported as required.
Absolutely.
But we will
Yes.
not be waiting for them to step up to do
Yes.
it. We will have our own people. Okay, thank
Yes,
you.
and I think something that will be helpful, Board Member Motzinger, too, and for all of you as well, and is to show you, and not tonight, we would not have time, but to send you some of the PowerPoints that we have actually trained with. They're very extensive, and we purposely put a lot of language in them. And normally with PowerPoints, you're not supposed to have so many words on them, but they're very extensive, so folks can take them back to their sites. And so we can get you all some of those so that you can see what the training has been.
Okay, because contact tracing is so critical. And
Yes.
if it's not done well, a lot can get lost. And the ventilation review of all of have we done a good ventilation review of all the buildings? And as far as making sure they're well ventilated, given that COVID seems to be spread by aerosols more than that it's aerosol. It's not so much fomites. It's not things that land. It's really in the air.
Lauren,
We'll go back to Lauren or Brent T. He did a pretty extensive presentation following the review, and he talked about the schools that needed additional support. So what I can do, he did send us an email. I'll re-forward that email to everybody, and we'll post that on our website, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sounds great. I think Board Member Burke has a question. Ms. Burke?
Yes, thank you so much. I have a few questions. So my first question, and I don't know if this is for Lauren or Tricia, how long does it take for the disinfectant to dry once the teacher sprayed the bathrooms down?
Is it 10 minutes? One?
Yeah, so it has a dwell time of 10 minutes, so after that point, it should be just about dry. However, I think it is important to keep in mind that in any environment, a liquid could dry at a different rate, just depending on the humidity and the ambient temperature in the air.
Okay, and my second question, for those surfaces that do need some additional wiping, will teachers be provided gloves?
Yes, actually when Tricia gets done with this full presentation, I'm actually going to take a few minutes and speak to the PPE items that have been provided to the schools, and then also items that are available for them to continue to order on an ongoing basis throughout the remainder of the year to use as they see fit.
Okay, and then my last question, and this one is for Dr. Harrison. Many members of the community have asked this question, and I certainly don't have an answer. For the 11 schools that had been identified with poor ventilation, community members would like to know how many years these schools have had ventilation problems. And I know that we're talking about 11, so if you can give us an idea about the years for each of them.
Well, I did not anticipate that question, so certainly do not have an answer there, but I will say the 11 schools that we looked at for bipolar ionization of Cook, Southwest, North Hills, Kimberly Park, Griffin, Hall, Woodward, Cache, Petrie, Bolton, Mineral Springs, and Sedge Garden. So you can see that some of the schools are very, very old, and they actually have been completed. I'll send you all the update. We were able to add schools: Brunson, Union Cross, Kernersville Elementary, Easton, Ashley Annex, and Jim and Diggs Latham. So what I'll do with this report is ask Mr. Motzinger to add the dates of construction for each of the schools and send you an official report, okay?
And in that official report, I'm sorry, you did say that you would have them add the dates.
Yes. We'll get Brent Teague and Mr. Motzinger to add the dates of the last construction. But I did name the schools. Some are very old schools, probably about 40 years old, and some are not so old. So we'll add the dates. And then we'll have Brent maybe post this on the website in a fashion so it's on the frequently asked questions. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they will add, you will ask them to add the dates of construction for the schools. Can you also ask them to add the dates that the ventilation issues were identified within each building?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Dr. Hairston.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I don't see any further hands or questions, so Ms. McManus, you can proceed, move on. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right, so now let's focus on instruction. And I will say on this item, Ms. Grant and her team have been absolutely amazing. They have created, again, many tools to send that schools have received. Our principals have received them, IFs in schools, assistant principals, APIs, all of these folks have received training on what to expect in the area of instruction. And so basically, first and foremost, we're following the instructional framework. So amidst all of the other details we're thinking of, we have to provide high quality instruction for our students. They deserve it. And so we are going to be following the instructional framework, which is our guide in Winston-Salem, Forsyth County schools. For the individually packed manipulatives, this has been a question I've heard. Yes, students are still going to have manipulatives. Yes, students are still going to have supplies. And they're going to have books. They're just going to be individualized and packed for their own personal use. And so, yes, they're going to have their own manipulatives if they need them for math or supplies, scissors, crowns, all of those things that students need to actually be able to excel in their work and in their learning. They're going to have small group instruction. So there will be interventions and small group instruction provided for students. And that may be provided at a smaller work table where students are social distanced with their masks. And it also might not be provided at a work table. It may be provided in their own seats, because what I want us to remember here, and in talking to Ms. Grant, to Nicolette, she reinforces with me, is that the purpose of small group instruction is to provide differentiated support to students that is on their level, to push them, if they are below level, to on level, or to push them if they're on level to even higher. And so it doesn't matter where it takes place, it matters that it does take place. And so small group instruction and one-to-one interventions will absolutely continue in our classrooms. Variety of texts will be used for students. That will also be put in baggies, and as they turn them back in, they'll be quarantined for 72 hours before they're put back in to anybody else's bag. And so we're going to be watching for that as well. You're not going to see as many cooperative groups where kids, in our traditional schooling, you're going to see kids huddled up on desk and they're collaborating with each other and problem solving together. You're going to see less of that at their tables because, again, they need to stay social distanced. And so you'll see more of individual labs versus groups coming together to do labs. They're not going to be sharing materials. We've asked all of our media centers to continue to allow students to check out books. So they're creating virtual displays, they're creating mobile checkout procedures, and ways that students can still have access to great literature. That's important to our students. And also, each of our schools is having 2 days that each school will be communicating with their families. That will be asynchronous instruction days where teachers can come in and make those final preparations before their students return. And so, thank you to our families for working with us so that teachers can have that last bit of time If you think about pre-planning, this is kind of like a 2-day final pre-planning for teachers to make sure that they are ready. So those are just some high-level non-negotiables around instruction. And again, our schools then have the flexibility to make it look slightly different from school to school, but these are kind of our expectations. These are our expectations in every school. So I'm going to move to the next one if there are no questions there. So expectations with schedules and transitions. So there is an expectation that as students move from one place to the other, it is staggered. And so it's not going to be a bell ring and everybody walking all over the place. We are going to be very strategic in our dismissal, in our transition times, and students will be staggered. Because if you notice, just like in this hallway picture, there are markings on the floors, and so we're asking students to stay social distance even in hallways, and always with their mask on. We are keeping cohorts together as much as possible, and so in elementary schools, special service teachers, encore teachers will be pushing in. In secondary schools, they will be going to those classes, but they will be kept in cohorts within those classes so that students from different classrooms are not commingling, but that they're still able to get those specialized classes that mean a lot to them, from arts classes to other specialized classes, PE and other classes that they are wanting to take. And then also breakfast and lunch is being served in classrooms for the most part. If there are any exceptions to that, students have to continue to be social distanced. And that is really the only time that mask, I've heard from several people that mask can be taken off during the day for breaks, and that is not true. Mask will be worn except while eating. I mean, obviously students will take their mask off to eat breakfast and lunch, or if they're drinking water, but other than that, they will keep their masks on. And then multiple screening teams will be used upon arrival, and the screening training is taking place this week. That is one of those trainings that is very extensive from a time a student arrives on campus, what that looks like. If they have any type of response that shows a concern, they will not come to school. They'll stay home during the day. If there's any question that comes, we have procedures for all of that. And so that's around expectations with schedules and transitions. And in just a few minutes, you're going to hear from one of our middle school principals about his actual schedule that they've created, and that's at Jefferson Middle. All right, moving on. Expectations with staff, team, and roles. Earlier, Dr. Hairston mentioned the first bullet, and this was really important. And it said every school created a reopening team to map out the details of the reopening plan. And that team does include teachers and other leaders on campus and other staff on campus. And the purpose of that is when you're part of the plan, you feel better able to buy in, and we wanted teacher voice, and that was Dr. Hairston, that was one of the criteria she said, is that we want teachers on these reopening planning teams. And basically every school did select a COVID coordinator, and that training, that orientation took place last Thursday. That's one of the PowerPoints that I'm going to make sure that you see, because it explains that role and how part of how they're going to trace students that come into the designated holding space. We're hoping that that is a minimal number, but that if a student does come to the holding space, what happens next, as far as starting to keep a record and what letters go home to parents to say how many days a student might have to stay home. All of that has been given to our schools. Trained student screening teams, again, that's happening this week, and we have hundreds of people being trained as we speak, Monday through Friday of this week, in order to be able to screen. The nurse extenders were already hired. Thank you for approving that contract last week. They started their orientation today with Jennifer Corso, and that is 20 nurse extenders. Their entire role is to focus on COVID support. And so they are going to be in schools, assigned to schools every single day, and so there'll be a health professional presence on our schools more often than now. And they'll be working with our health department nurses as well. And so as we think about COVID response, we're thinking about a team of people in each school. And again, extensive training has been taking place since July. All right, next. And here are a few other things that just some general things that you would want to know. And that is about the masking. And I already explained that. The electrostatic sprayers, and we are asking that schools, that all classroom spaces, everything be sprayed on Wednesdays and then on Friday afternoons at a minimum. That does not mean that they can't be used every day at the end of the day, but those are the 2 days at a minimum. That there is the standardized signage in all entryways and throughout buildings. It's standard across schools. If you walk into any of our schools right now, you're going to see the hand sanitizer stations throughout the school. They're everywhere. I've been to many schools last week, and they are definitely everywhere. And specific protocols are in place for contact tracing. And so we will make sure that you know what those protocols are. So those are other procedural expectations. And I'm going to jump next into two of our principals that are going to give you the principal's perspective on this. We have a middle school and elementary school, since they are first to return. And so if you turn to the next slide, the first person that's going to share a little bit about how he's taken all of these lessons, all of these trainings, all of these guidelines, and now how he has actually created a readiness in his school, and that is Principal Shane O'Neill from Jefferson Middle. Shane, thanks for joining us.
Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. I'd like to, first of all, good afternoon. I don't know if it's afternoon or evening. Good late afternoon to the board members, Dr. Hairston, Ms. McManus. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to share all the wonderful things that are happening at Jefferson Middle School. But before I go to the next slide, I just want to let the board and the committee know that, and Dr. Hairston and Ms. McManus, that on behalf of my middle school colleagues, we work extensively together through collaborative effort, whether it's a Zoom meeting or emails. Once we have these weekly meetings that were referenced earlier, we come together and how's this going to work in our buildings? So I am presenting Jefferson Middle School's plan, but this is also something that has been shared with my middle school colleagues as we're preparing for all of our sixth graders to return to campuses that they have not had the wonderful opportunity to be a part of as of yet due to our closing and COVID-19. I didn't want to forget to say that part. So if you want to go to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about, I want to start with talking about how we implemented, was referenced the reopening plan and the committees. We have 4 committees at Jefferson, as most schools do. And those committees are made up of administrators as well as support staff and teachers. And as Dr. Harrison has told principals time and time again, this is a joint effort of all of us coming together and doing what's best for our community, our staff, and our students. So in this montage of pictures, you can see with the facilities, we've gone through every aspect of our building. We have come up with routes as far as upstairs, downstairs, one-way directions within our hallways. We have maintained social distancing in our classrooms. We have marked off certain spaces. We've gone with our 6-foot measuring stick, measuring tape, or with a measuring stick and determined that that was going to be adequate spacing for our students. We've done so in our restrooms. We've marked off 6 feet social distancing and locked some of the stalls. We have marked spaces on the floors for our students. We've installed signs with 3 W's, remembered what to do. Throughout our building, we have shared these with our staff. We've done a walk with our staff to go over some of these spaces. You see the mandatory temperatures we've taken. We have 3 screening stations designated at our school, 1 for our car riders, 1 for our bus riders, and 1 for our walkers who come in. We're in the process now of working with when we screen our students and identify them as having gone through the screening, how are we going to identify them? So that when they move throughout the building, we will know that they have been identified, they've been screened, and are safe to move throughout the building. We have come up with safety protocols in our cafeteria, in our common areas, within our gym. And we've taken these first 2 days with our 6th grade teachers and our encore teachers to come in the building, meet with them virtually, talk with them about our expectations and readiness for the return of our students, and giving them opportunities in their classroom to make sure that their desks are 6 feet apart. How are they going to make it inviting for their classroom? Training on the use of the camera when they have some in the blended classroom. Some are working from home, some will be working in the classroom. We have had our gym teachers talk about how we're going to make sure we sanitize the equipment, how we make sure that the students are going to be socially distanced. My PE teachers have worked collaboratively to actually talk about, we're going to start with the dance unit, which is in middle school. It's not the typical unit that every middle schooler is fighting at the bit to start with, but they're going to work going through the physical activity, but not limiting the amount of use of the equipment. But when we do use it, they've got a plan in place for sterilizing it. We have checklists that we will have hanging in our bathrooms when the custodian will check them about every hour or so, check off that everything has been sanitized. We're in the process now to make sure that every classroom has all the PPE equipment that they need, such as hand sanitizer and gloves that were referenced earlier, and Kleenex, all the things that the district has provided for us. And it's on that facilities checklist, so we're making sure that it's all there for our teachers to be ready to welcome our students. Anything that we haven't had, the district has been gracious to get it to us as soon as possible. We have to realize that we're all in this together, and it's uncharted territory for everyone in the United States and around the world, and we're doing the best we can, and together we're making it as successful as possible. And then the meat and bones of some of it is the schedule that we've had to put together to make it work for our students. Ms. Manis, if you want to go to the next slide. So in creating our master schedule for Plan B, we really wanted to try to mirror as best as we could. And again, I'll have to say we haven't had students in Plan B come into the building. So this is with 6th grade and then with 7th and 8th grade, this is what our plan currently looks like as of today. The hope is that we will be able to mirror as much as what the students have had as far as their daily schedule goes in remote learning as when they return to the building, so that we're not upsetting something that we have finally gotten to where it works for us at Jefferson Middle School. So you can see if you look at the 6th grade in the upper left-hand corner there, the screening and the students' arrival time, 7 to 7:45, with students will come be screened, receive their breakfast. They will go into the classroom. It says tutoring there. There could be the opportunity for students to work on iReady at that time. Of course, with their social distancing, then we will transition to first period. And it will be, and the staff knows, and they are appreciative of the fact, all hands on deck. Safety is number one. Safety of the students and the staff is number one. And it's going to be taking middle school, or for us, taking Jefferson Middle School and slowing it down a little bit as far as the day goes. It doesn't hustle and bustle with the normal 1,200 students we have. It needs to slow down, and we need to take precautions for everyone that's involved at school that day. So you'll notice that with first period, 30 minutes of synchronous, 20 minutes asynchronous. There's asynchronous. That's an opportunity during that asynchronous time for students to be able to ask questions of their teacher, whether they're on Zoom, zooming in, the new lingo we learn these days, whether they're zooming in or whether they're in the classroom physically. It also gives an opportunity for teachers to, if they're having breakout sessions with the students who are sitting there, mixed with the students who are working at home. So there's still that bond is still being built. That's extremely important for all students. And I'm going to say for me, with our middle schoolers, to know they have to have that social emotional part. That's something we've really focused on with the teachers and with the students. And then there's that window of time for them to have lunch, and then the afternoon. And it's all going to be staggered throughout the day. When we switch classes, there's that 20 minutes of asynchronous to have some of that staggered for our students who are in the building with us, so that we're not all just, the bell's not ringing and they're not just moving. We've got the hallways marked 6 feet apart with painter's tape all the way through with routes. So we know we're going to have to spend those first couple of days going over that and modeling it and practicing it with the students. That is our responsibility as educators, and that's what we intend fully to do. We're also preparing a video with the staff members being the students, and actually going through what it looks like from 7 o'clock until 2 o'clock, transitioning between classes, going to the cafeteria, going to the restroom, wearing our masks, all these things that we have been talking about and the expectations that we have, we're going to role play it for the student. I'm sure they'll find a lot of enjoyment in that, as middle schoolers usually do. We've also provided on that WOW Wednesday, working on Wednesday time, we're going to still continue to provide our tutoring for our students and our virtual club time on that as well. I feel like I could say so much. I could talk a long time. I really wanted to give you an overview of what we're working through pretty much 24/7. Everyone wants answers yesterday, and I wanted them a week ago. And my staff realizes that we're all in this together, and we're doing what's best for our students and the safety of our staff. I do see there's a question of, do I need to facilitate that? I'll be glad to.
Yeah, that's
Well, Member Crowley.
This is
I'm sorry.
Board Member Crowley. I have a question about, first of all, thank you for all the thought that you put into this, and just, there are so many moving parts, it's kind of overwhelming. The picture that caught my eye in the montage was the one of the bathrooms.
Okay.
Can you help me how, explain how it would be safer to use 2 stalls instead of 4 stalls with, with 400 kids in that section of the building?
Okay, yes, well, we measure off with our stalls, we measure them off 6 feet apart. And we've talked as a staff, the going to the bathroom is going to have to be very closely monitored, because we've even marked outside of our, I mean, we're going to have to, the paradigm shift is going to be when kids change classes, we're going to have staff members throughout the hallways. So they're not going to be able to just have that time to go to the bathroom, because there's that, you're still going to have so many in there. We're going to actually have to have someone almost doing some monitoring of those restrooms to ensure that, I mean, I understand they're going to want kids are going to, that's a mind shift that they're not going to be able to, we're not going to be able to have that many go in there at one time. So the pictures didn't fully show it, but outside the door, there's a painter's tape and there's 6 feet marks. It's almost going to have to be like elementary school. And we're right now having conversations, because it's going to be a mind shift for our educators as well, having a bathroom break like they do in elementary's ready. I mean, I've been a former elementary educator and elementary principal. That's kind of how we do things in elementary school, not so much in middle. So
I guess my point though is that I understand the 6 feet apart concept. What I don't understand is how is it safer to have 1,200 children use 4 toilets instead of 8 toilets? So that's, I just want to make sure we're using, that we're not just so focused on the 6 feet apart premise, that we're not thinking about what's actually safer. And to me, it'd be safer to spread out children over more sinks and toilets than it would be to mark off certain ones as not being used to keep everybody 6 feet apart.
Sure. Okay. We have 1, 2, yes, ma'am. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bathrooms. That was just one example of one.
I know, but if you have 200 kids on that hall, you're having 200 kids use 2 toilets instead of 4 toilets, or whatever the numbers are. My point is that I just want to see the logic behind using fewer just to keep kids spaced apart. That's my point.
Right, and you're right. The reason behind it was to keep kids spaced apart.
Right, and I just want to make sure we're really thinking through, is that the safest with those types of facilities where they are very much high touch?
Right.
Ms. Crowley, what I'll say is that, he probably doesn't know, nor do I. So I think what we're trying to do is, with all due respect, trying to follow the 6 feet apart. If you'll go back to that slide, Ms. McManus, we'll go back to the slide. And one thing that we said they would try to do is try some things out. And then if we get in there and we find that, because I was looking at his numbers, and he really doesn't have 400 children. He has right now 6th graders coming back. He's got signed up 291.
Right.
So what'll happen when he gets in there and we see that only 291 students are there, we've told the principals, make the adjustments. Don't go hard, don't go so hard at something. So we're going to start out with this model. Trust the principals and their decision making, and hopefully when we get in there, we say, well, this is not, we don't need to do all this, and make those adjustments. So we want to reserve, we want to reserve that right to make those adjustments, because he doesn't have 291 have signed up to come back, not 400. Okay.
Thank you.
Exactly. That was that's why I said as of today, Ms. Crowley. Yeah, absolutely. There'll be adjustments made throughout all of this. There's some flexibility is one of the key words that we talk about as SEL piece with our staff members is flexibility like never before. I referenced Gumby, and some of my younger staff members weren't quite sure who that was, but that's okay. Yes, flexibility. So we are certainly aware that this is not something set in stone. This is a starting point to make sure that we're prepared for when they do return.
Mr. O'Neill, I'm glad to see that you're feeling a little older, because I feel very old when I see you. So anyway, I think Board Member Burke
Yes, ma'am.
had her hand up. So Ms. Burke, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you so much, Mr. O'Neill.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if you can answer this question or if this is a question for Dr. Harrison, but again, I'm asking on behalf of concerned community members, will our cohorts of middle school students mix with other students during encore classes?
Dr. Harrison, do you want me to answer that, or?
Yeah,
go
ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. O'Neill.
Yes, in our conversations, Board Member Burke, with principals and with the leadership of this district, we did talk about that. And yes, with our numbers and looking at each of our classes, our encore classes, they will be 6 socially distanced. If I have 4 teams of eighth graders, and they will be, so the Mountaineers, for example, I have 3 teams actually. The Mountaineers will be here in the classroom and travel together and be released from encore. Mountaineers will be released first to go to their next encore. Then the next team will be released to go, and then the next team. So while they're in the classroom, they'll be socially distanced, and in their transition from encore back to the next encore and then back to their core classes, we're staggering our release on that. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for answering that. And then,
sorry for my visual, that seems slow motion, but yes, ma'am.
no problem. Thank you so much. And I have one additional question.
Okay.
We did not talk about subs, but I think now is a good time to ask, are we planning to use only long-term subs? Is that correct?
I'm going to defer that question.
Yeah. Javelin, are you on the line? She has spent a lot of time on the issue of substitutes, and I know this was part of one of our meetings. Go ahead.
Absolutely. No, when we go to Plan B, the plan is to allow for daily subs, and we're staffing up to be able to support that. We understand the need will change with that transition.
Okay, and then I want to ask Javelin, if teachers become sick during the school day and we have a sub in one room and they've been with a group of students for maybe an hour, are we going to maybe possibly move that sub to cover another class for any reason? I said sick, but for any reason. Will the subs move around the building and come into contact with the different students throughout the day?
I don't think that's the intent. If there's a sub that's needed for a particular classroom, they would be in the classroom where they're needed. Yet, I do see them collaborating with other teachers as needed, and that could be virtually, so that there's complete coverage. So the subs are generally 1-for-1. That's what we need.
Thank you.
Board Member Burke, I'm sorry. I was going to address that just on the, I mean, not on a reassuring level at the school level. We've been talking as an admin team and with our lead secretary, who happens to be the one that usually secures subs in the building, to reach out to our subs, the ones that we typically use on a regular basis, and work with them to make sure, see how many have had Canvas training of some sort, some degree, some level, and thank the district for those who have. We currently have a good number, a handful of willing subs who have had some Canvas training if that need does arise. So we've talked about that at the school level. I just wanted to reassure the committee and the board members that we are talking about that and what we best need to do, because our teachers are asking us. So that has been brought up. That is something we're working with HR and at the school level to with our subs that we've had in the past. I just wanted to throw that out.
Thank you so much. And then I came up with an additional question. Will our students lose any instructional time following this plan?
Will you ask that question again?
Will our students lose any instructional time following this plan?
That is certainly not the goal, because our current, that's why we, as I said earlier, we tried to mirror our Plan B instructional day with that of when it was in Plan C, because we had 50 minutes, 30 minutes was synchronous, then we had asynchronous, and we had a little bit of buffer time built in for students to have a little bit of a break before we went into the next class period. So that's that transition we will have for, if we have to stagger our movement throughout the building for then the kids who are working remotely to join in second period at the same time those are in the blended in-person cohort to join. And we realize that there's a need for a couple minute staggering of that for us to do so. And the teachers are working in their PLTs and working in grade level meetings and working with administrators and our instructional facilitator to look at our curriculum, what we have to get covered, and are we going to be able to cover that? Yes. Are we going to do it strategically and different than we may have done it a year or 2 years ago? Yes, but that's how you grow as an educator. So that is something we as administrators are there to support them with.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
before,
Yes,
Board Member Parker, did you want to say something before we move to Gatling?
I had one question for Mr. O'Neill. So pretty typically do all, like whenever your students go to encore classes, are they pretty much like, do all your sixth graders go to a sixth grade band class, or will there be some mixing? Okay, that's what I thought.
Right, yeah, our encore has always been throughout, it's almost like 3 schools going at once.
Right.
And so that mixing, even when we have all 3 grade level cohorts back in the building, we've already planned for that transition to not be, here we go. And I mean, like I was showing with the arrows, we've got it to where we're going to be changing our routes. So you're not going to be coming up the stairs and I'm going down the stairs, or you're going to be going down the hallway and I'm going to be going this way. We've marked all of that clearly. Even our ramps outside and our pavement outside, we've marked that with spray paint.
Right, and so each grade level will be pretty much just that grade level. If
Yes, ma'am.
we do have a need for contact tracing or whatever.
Yes, ma'am. And there'll be our schedule, there'll be a little bit extra time between the 8th grade coming, going to encore, and then the 7th grade coming, and then the 6th grade classes coming. There'll be a little bit of extra time in there for some additional cleaning or, whatever the case may be once we get in there. Yes, ma'am.
Right. Thank you. Whoops, it
You're
looks like we may have one more. Yes, it looks like, let's see, Ms. Motsinger has a hand up. So Ms. Motsinger, you have a question?
Yes, thank you so much, and thank you for this presentation.
Yes, ma'am.
The encore classes, things like music, band, chorus, isn't it true that you put out a whole lot more aerosols if you're using a wind instrument, for example, or if you're singing? Is there going to be limitations on those kind of activities in schools, given that 6 feet, we've all seen the photographs.
Right. And that was actually, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, so, obviously we're all really concerned, having seen those photographs, of how far aerosols go when you're singing or using instruments. And how are we going to be limiting exposure during those times?
And that was a question that, as I referencing back to when I talked earlier about the middle school, my colleagues and I getting together and talking, we actually asked Brad Oliver that question, who's the program manager over Performing Arts. Because I'm certainly not musically inclined, unfortunately. My son reminds me daily. But with the wind instruments and orchestra, we talked just today with our orchestra teacher about how to disinfect and clean those strings. And then as far as band goes, putting for lack of a cloth with a rubber band over the bell of an instrument. Again, deferring back to our Brad Oliver, our program manager, that limiting it to 15 minutes of the class period if there's actual playing. And then in chorus, I spoke with our chorus teacher just yesterday, and we're talking about rearranging the room and limiting that again. In the beginning, the amount of music that's actually coming out of the voice of the students as opposed to listening to it and critiquing it, which is part of the standard course of study, that will also be covered in that course. So we're very cognizant of that 6 foot social distancing.
Is it possible for the students who are there 2 days a week that they will just be doing the listening part and that any performing they do when they're home and virtual, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. That is extremely possible, yes, absolutely.
I'm just wondering, if I were a teacher teaching,
Yes.
how would I do that?
You know, and for at my school, you know, when the band teacher comes to talk to me, or the chorus teacher, the orchestra teacher, that is their domain, and I am not going to stand there and say to them, I expect you to have those students playing. If you feel comfortable, if you're more comfortable, and your safety is that important to me as well, we'll do however we need to, whatever you need to do to structure your class to teach a standard course of study is exactly what I expect you to do. And if they're playing at home and you're listening to them from home playing, that is extremely appropriate. I have a 9th grade son who plays band, and that's how he does it. I have no problem with that. I want everyone to be safe. So I would not put them in a situation that would require them to do something that's going to put someone at risk. So to answer your question, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Can we thank you, Shane. And
Yes, ma'am.
we also have.
Second.
Oh, yes,
Janice, I'm sorry. Ms. Burke, do you have another question, or was that your hand from earlier?
Yes, this is another question. We saw a video earlier where we had students at a table with the blue chairs. Will we have, those are the blue chairs. It was the video. And I wanted to know, will we have 2 students at each table?
No, ma'am. I can speak to the photo. Are you asking about this photo here? Or are you talking specifically about the video? Because in the photo, the one with the caution tape, I don't know if you can, I want to point to it. I know you can't see my hand. That's clearly marked off as that a student will be able to put a desk in that, put their book bag in that seat. There's not a student sitting in that seat. No, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
All right, so Jefferson Middle is ready. We're going to move over to, we have another principal with us, and that is Principal Janelle Gatling from Ashley Elementary, and we wanted you to have the perspective of one of our elementary principals. So Janelle, are you with us?
I am. Good evening, Chair Woodbury and all remaining board members, Dr. Harrison and Tricia. Did you all hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, as you can see, Ashley is ready. So, a lot like what Shane has said, we went by the reopening checklist that we received. That checklist was very detailed as to what protocol we should take. And what we did, I organized a team. The team consisted of my leadership team, along with my custodians. And I must say, I have to give a shout out to my leadership team and my custodian, my day boarder, Mr. Thomas Wall, and my SMO, Mr. Maurice and his team. Without this, it could not have been possible. So I just need to give a shout out to them. But looking at the protocol or the checklist, as the leadership team, we looked at what needed to be done, and we assigned dates to those things on the protocol sheet to give us a focus as to what could be done and when we should have it done. So when you see here, you see, of course, the welcome back sign, and I can't mask my excitement. That is intentionally done and strategically done because when kids return, when our scholars return, as much as school may not look like, feel like what it was, we want them to have some sense of normalcy. So this is the reason for the bulletin boards. I've actually said to my teachers, you know, when our scholars enter the building, we're going to treat it as if it is the first day of school and they're coming back. So if you look here in one diagram, you see the round circles that show the 6 feet apart. This is where students will stand when they transition. You also see the stand here, which is the sanitation depot is what we call it. And we have them every place in the hallway where scholars can simply hit the pump and wash their hands. Now, this is the K1 hall here. This is the reason for the water fountain being taped off. In our 3-5 hallways, we don't have it that way because we feel like our scholars are old enough to just understand the sign. If you notice, there's a sign that also says do not use, but we did something extra on the K1 hallway. And this is also a classroom that is set up with 6 feet distancing. And as we continue to walk through, as we did today, as soon as today we did another walkthrough, there are about 17 kids that can fit in our classroom 6 feet apart, and the teacher remaining at the front. But there are a couple of things that we still may need to move. So there are some adjustments that need to be made, but not a lot of adjustments. We've also decided to put down directional signs where you show where you're walking, going down and coming up. We did this to avoid any congestion in the hallways. We're going to have transition, but we're going to minimize that transition because we want to keep our kids in cohorts. And even though they can travel in cohorts, we just feel like minimizing the transition would be the best thing. So with that said, we're going to have our instructional assistants bring breakfast and lunch to the classroom. At this time, recess will be on the inside because I don't know if we can guarantee scholars going outside and being able to be 6 feet physically apart. That's a hard task for anyone to try to achieve. So with that being said, we're going to have recess on the inside, and I think that still would be fine because if we think about the kids that are being virtual, they're doing that now with PE, and it works out pretty good. We have an exit and an entrance for our car riders, our bus riders, and our walkers. We have a screening team. The screening team consists of administration, the office staff, our instructional assistants, and our specialists. Most of everyone attended the training yesterday, and I think there's some training still to come that we'll be involved in. We made sure that our desks were 6 feet apart. We made sure in the hallway they're moving in different directions again, and they're 6 feet apart. We will have scheduled, like Shane said, in elementary school, we are used to scheduled bathroom breaks. So we will have scheduled bathroom breaks. And I'm fortunate enough to have probably more instructional assistants in my building than other schools. So we have assigned instructional assistants to go and corral our scholars to use the bathroom so we can counter protect as much of that instructional time as we possibly can. So we want transition to be minimal, and with that said, specialists will go to the classrooms. EC and ESL, their teachers will come and get them and have them go to their classrooms because it's just not, we didn't see it being feasible for our EC and our ESL to push in because we couldn't honor the 6 feet of social distancing. So that's the first reason. So they will transition out. They will be escorted by their teachers to their classroom. Also, we have to look at our EC population and we have to make sure that we accommodate their IEP. So with that said, those EC students that migrate into the general education room for PE and lunch and recess, we can accommodate that. We have one core 2 class. So we're able to accommodate those kids going into the regular classroom for those activities or for those areas that are indicated on the scholars IEP. we had a checklist, and once we completed the checklist, we called Justin Thornton out, and I want to thank him because we wanted to make sure we were in compliance with everything. And Justin did a walk with us to make sure that we were 6 feet physical distance. We had our enter and exit where it should have been. We have a holding room that is designated. We have people who will be our screeners in the morning to check the temperature. So with that said, physically, we believe we are ready for school to open.
Okay.
And Ms. Parker, I'll let you know that Ashley actually hosted the Imprints Cares First Responder Program from April until about July. So they've actually had students, was it July or August?
The first part of August, Harrison.
Yeah, so it was April to August. They actually had students that they hosted for the First Responders Program. Just wanted to let you all know that. They have a little experience too.
Great. Ms. Gatling, I had just a couple of questions. Will you all, I think that earlier they had said that we might have tables in some of the smaller rooms like kindergarten or whatever. Will we still have some tables or do you have all this? I'm sorry, I'm getting feedback for some reason.
So, Board Member Parker, no, we will have all chairs because with tables, it is hard to truly physically distance them 6 feet. So there were tables in our kindergarten classes, but we did have to move them out to accommodate the maximum capacity for social distancing.
Okay. And the other question I had, I know that each classroom in elementary has an extensive kind of classroom library. Will you be using those classroom books with the same protocol that you do with the media center where you will quarantine those books for a certain amount of time and then bring them back into, back into circulation?
What we've actually asked is that we just not even do that for the safety purposes. We have our Wonders curriculum, and we do have a classroom library, but at this point, we just don't know how we could be very certain about the safety of our scholars, even with us cleaning. We don't want to miss a book. We don't want to oversight. We don't want to do anything. So at this point, that is off limits.
Okay, all right, thank you. I think Board Member Mike Singer, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. I had a few concerns or thoughts. I'm looking at this top picture, and I'm wondering, I'm seeing a screen, and I'm wondering where, and the desks are right up sort of against the wall. Where would a teacher stand and teach from?
So let me say, thank you. So let me say, this looks like one of the classrooms where the teachers have come back and they've done some readjusting. That's why we're going to have to do another walkthrough. Because if you see there's a desk in front of a station there that shouldn't be there, and I see 2 or 3 more, like one that's close to the closet that shouldn't be there. So that is a matter of readjusting that classroom. And
because I was just thinking, where would you teach from to be 6 feet away if you're the teacher?
So, Ms. Gallen, I'm going to chime in too to let you know your teachers have the numbers now. Only 10 students will be back in each class according to your numbers, so you only have 10. Just an FYI.
Okay, I was just seeing that. So if there are 10 kids actually, is it possible to arrange for outside recess if it's a group of 10 kids just because being outside is so much safer than being inside?
Absolutely, and like Dr. Harrison said, we didn't have those numbers. We went on what our latest numbers were, but if you're looking at 10 kids, that is absolutely feasible because K1, both, they have assistants and we could split those students up on the playground because they will have supervision. There will be two people out.
Absolutely. I just want kids to get outside and play, and outside is safe for them inside. So, and the other question I had is about water. Do people have water bottles, or how are students going to get water during the day?
So this is something that, as a leadership team and as a school, I met with my teachers as early as Friday. And we know they need water, and that is not anything that we're dismissing, but we're trying to figure out the best way. We thought about buying water, which will become extremely expensive. Then we thought about them bringing water bottles, and if that be the case, those water bottles would have to be filled at the water fountain. And then we wonder what contamination will that bring. So then we thought about buying empty water bottles and maybe having some coolers that on each hallway, and have assistants just fill up little water cups or even maybe the water bottles. So to be honest with you, that is something that we're still processing.
Okay, I was just thinking about that. Thank you so much.
I think Board Member Burke, you had a question?
Yes. Ms. Catlin?
Yes.
With your specific plan, with the additional responsibilities of assistants, would that put them in contact with all of the students and employees in the building?
Yes, Board Member Burke, it will.
As well as specialists?
Yes, ma'am, because we are using those people to help us screen I'm sorry, did you hear me?
No, ma'am.
I'm sorry.
No.
Yes, ma'am, that would put them in contact with the entire school because they are screening as students arrive, the bus, car riders, and walkers.
And they're reporting them to the rest as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Are there any more questions from board members? I don't think I see any at this point. All right, Ms. McManus will
Right, yes.
go on.
Yes, and we have the last slide. Can everybody else mute? I know we're getting feedback. There's one, there we go. Is that better? Yeah. All right, so Flex Wednesdays, we've been asked about Flex Wednesdays and basically why we chose that day and changing it from the Friday, and that really is because of the cohorts. And if you look at many districts across the country have chosen the Wednesday to do a deeper cleaning in between cohorts. So if you have fourth graders that are Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday there's a deeper cleaning, and Thursday and Friday the second cohort comes back. And really it was based on making sure that our facility gets even a deeper cleaning than the cleaning that will be happening every day and throughout the day. So that was Flex Wednesdays. And I will say that wherever we have a school that is trying to solve problems like the water or like books, we have our team of area superintendents, our area leadership teams, we have our cabinet. We will help solve those issues because, again, books in all kids' hands, manipulatives in all kids' hands, kids getting water is definitely part of what we're doing. So we will continue to provide that support as schools need thought partnership. And if any school needs any kind of containers for kids, any extra things that they might need, please do not hesitate to reach out. But I think having our principals just shows you a couple of different perspectives and how they've taken information and then customized it to their own schools, worked with their own leadership teams. But I can tell you one common denominator as I conclude and I answer any other questions is that the common denominator with all this is that, again, our leaders are taking this very seriously. We care about the health of our teachers. We care about the health of our students. We also care that our students are getting the education that they need and deserve while we're keeping them safe. And so, again, there are going to be things that come up along the way, and we've got to listen, validate concerns, and be responsive. And that's what we're trying to do. And I appreciate Janelle and Shane for coming on and answering questions and sharing what you're doing. And those are just two, 80 principals that could have come on today and shared their preparation story with us. So with that, any other questions, Board Member Perkins?
I think that Board Member Mott Singer had hers up, and then I think we've got another one after that. So, Ms. Mott Singer?
Yeah, so my concern about Flex Wednesdays, and I understand exactly why that was chosen for A days and B days, and that makes total sense. Is it possible to allow high school who will not be returning into the buildings till January at the earliest to continue the Flex Friday schedule that's really been working for them, and that I've heard from a lot of high school students really would like to be able to stay with Flex Fridays, at least until the issue of when they'll be in the building comes up. Is that a possibility?
What we're doing right now, Ms. Mott Singer, is looking at how much shared staff they have. And so hopefully we'll have that completed this week. If there's shared staff, it makes it challenging for us. So we're looking at shared social workers, the nurses that we brought on board. All of those folks are shared. And of course, if the high schoolers are not in play, but we've got to look at how much the special needs, how much crossover exists. And once we finish that, we'll gladly send you all an update on that, okay?
Yeah, I'm just really concerned. I know how much we're trying to find a way to offer flexibility and patience and grace with each other. And in particular, I think our high school students are trying really hard to be flexible. And I also think they keep reaching deep, and they're beginning to come up empty. And I'm wondering if we can really make an attempt to.
We'll look at shared staff.
Accommodate that through the time that they are still entirely virtual, at least.
We'll look at shared staff, because although they're virtual, you have shared staff who might need to be accessible to students. And also we need to survey our students. We need to really do that. One thing I found is that I probably have received probably 3 good emails from students, but I also know that we have thousands of students who may be comfortable with that. So we'll ask Ms. McManus to get with the principals, and we'll put some kind of survey together to make sure that when we swing that way, it's okay. All right?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Chair Woodbury, did you have your hand up, or?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Board Member Parker. The question I have, and I was sitting here trying, kind of struggling with it, but I don't want the principals to feel like they're speaking on behalf of our principals. I do know, being an educator, you talk to each other and you, share, as I call them, war stories around anything that we go through as educational leaders. But I was, of course, as board members, we have definitely received communication from teachers around just being very concerned about working in, this new environment. And I think that, I just wonder, from the school leadership perspective, maybe how principals are trying to the best of your ability to communicate with teachers, at that human level around, addressing their concerns and making them, I guess, try to feel to some degree less stressed about, returning to work, now or later.
Board Member Woodbury, Chair Woodbury, I'll be glad to go first on that. I think a large responsibility that I have as the school leader is to communicate with my staff and to listen. And in doing so, when we started this back in March, I started a frequently asked question page that I ran daily. and I answered them as often as I could. As information was shared from the board level, from the district level, I shared that with my staff and got their questions answered. And I think I've communicated, I feel very strongly that I have communicated as we've reopened back in August with my staff, information as I've received it, whether it be through a weekly message or through my frequently asked questions. When the board voted to go back to Plan B, I immediately met with my staff, answered questions that I was able to answer at that time, and then following that up with then having that, again, reinstating the frequently asked questions piece for me to be able to answer their questions as I sought them out from the district. I think, and then just talking to them and reminding them of their social and emotional state. And that's kind of how I lead all of my staff, start all of my staff meetings, all my grade level meetings, just having conversation with them. And know we're all in this together, and reassuring them that their safety is utmost importance, that of the students is utmost importance, and together we will get through this. And, it echoes what's been said by the board, it echoes what's been said by our district leadership, but it hits home when it's your family, whether it be in the community, your family of the school. At Jefferson Middle School, we are a Patriot family, and it hits home, and we have to listen to each other and support each other. And whether that's in person, or whether that's over the phone, or whether that's through Zoom, just being cognizant of that, and reminding them of how our families are feeling going through this time, and our students are, and they miss us and we miss them, and we don't know how much until it's something that we don't have in front of us every day. And while it's a struggle and I don't have all the answers, and no one person does, we continue to listen and talk and converse and problem solve together like never before. And not that we weren't always doing it, but now it just seems that we need each other. The community needs us, we need the community. The teachers need me, I need them. And that's the message I deliver as often as I can, twice a week at least. Just getting that out and just talking to them and answering their questions, and seeking out the answers I don't have. Like when Board Member Montsinger asked about the band instruments, I didn't know, had no idea of an answer to that question, so I sought it out. And I think, and then whether we have them with each other, as you were referring to the middle school principals, or elementary and high school, we talk to everybody. I think just seeking out the transparency of the district leadership and providing that information has been invaluable. All the answers aren't there right in front of us, and like I said earlier, everybody wants what was there yesterday, and I want what it was. I want it a week ago. But we're finding it out. We're trying to keep our parents communicating. I'm communicating with them weekly as often as I can, giving them information as I have it, to make them informed. I think information and listening are key to us, and just remembering we're humans. We have feelings, we have concerns, and not losing sight of that. Ms. Gatlin?
Yes. So I think one of the things that Shane said is so very important is, the fact that we have constantly been in communication with our staff. And I think the key is being transparent to our staff. And even with that, they have a fear. I would be remiss tonight if I did not say that. And it's the fear of the unknown. There are questions that, they may ask me that I don't have an answer to, because I don't think anyone else has an answer to. So those are the feelings of the teachers in my building. They are excited. They do want the kids back. But with that being said, there is that unknown. Can we keep them safe? What happens if we don't keep them safe? That's the biggest question that comes about.
Thank you all. Thank you for answering that. And I don't think I saw any other hands. So we'll go on to Ms. Richards. I think you have the next update with the school level PPE update.
Thank you, Ms. Parker. Good evening, everyone. All right, so just want to take a few minutes this evening and give you all an update on personal protective equipment purchases. So when we closed schools back in March, we immediately began through April and through May in preparing for the possibility of reopening our schools in August, moving through that process. At that time, as we were looking through personal protective equipment that we were going to be needing, there were a lot of items that were in a relatively short supply, and a lot of the items were reserved for hospitals at that time as well. Things like hand sanitizer, gloves, masks were in short supply at that time. And so we had to do quite a bit of research and reach out to a number of vendors. We also had a number of vendors during that time contacting us as well. So myself, I know Daryl Walker, our Director of Facilities, Daryl Segoy, our Executive Director of Maintenance, Brent Teague, we all took quite a number of calls and virtual meetings during that time to learn about a wide variety of products available to us, the quality of those products, and also importantly, the time frame on receiving those so that we would be ready to have those in August if we were to return to a Plan B model. So as we went through that process, we also began putting together information that we knew we needed to provide out to the schools, and we needed to get our facilities ready. So the Strong Schools NC Toolkit was first published in June of 2020. And so in the month of July, we began having presentations about the facility preparedness with our principals. And a lot of information was provided through that training, but some of the highlights in that process were asking the principals to start conducting building walks to assess their needs. We have over 9 million square feet throughout our entire district. That's a lot of ground to cover. And we know that the principals know their space better than anybody. There were a number of different signage requirements in the toolkit that principals needed to assess in how they were going to prepare their buildings for entry, and designating those entry points, identifying social distancing needs throughout the building where they know that their students tend to congregate. Tricia and the principals on the call this evening spoke about the floor markers and different directional requirements that they have addressed throughout their building. We also had the principals do an assessment of where they felt like the best locations throughout their building was going to be for hand sanitizer stations. We knew that there was a requirement for hand sanitizer to be inside each classroom, but with the possibility of students going to the cafeteria or other parts of the school, there are also some areas where a restroom maybe isn't as handy. And so the hand sanitizer stations come into play so that they always have access to that to sanitize their hands. We also spent a great deal of time talking about classroom setups. You've gotten to see some pictures this evening of specific schools, and I think you've seen a few of those throughout the last several months as well. Principals got to see a wide variety of setups for band rooms and science rooms, and then your standardized classrooms as well. And this presentation is shared with you, and there's a link to it here if you would like to see that in full detail. So as we finished up the presentation with the principals on facility preparedness and gave them an opportunity to do their building walks, we then had them complete a survey so that at the district level, we could be working on the various signs that were required, those floor markers, as well as the hand sanitizer stations, which you cannot see because of my little box down here. I apologize for that. So some of those required signs that were ordered by the principals and shipped out and are still available to them to this day as they maybe make some of those last minute adjustments and identify a new location for screening students or a new access point are the mask guidance signage, the Know Your W's, symptoms guidance on when you should stay home depending on the symptoms that you have, social distancing reminders for walls, hand washing guidance that goes on any sink anywhere in the building that hand washing would take place as a friendly reminder of that process, and water fountain usage signage in accordance to the Strong Schools NC Toolkit. And then as well as ordering the floor markers, this was for an initial supply. The toolkit does state that the required locations are our entry points where we would screen students, and then in the restrooms to help control the number of students that are coming in and out of the restaurant to keep them distanced throughout that entire process. Those are also able to be continuously ordered as principals continue to look at their buildings and see that they may need a few more of those to place them around their building. And then again, the hand sanitizer stations as well. Another item that came to us back in August, we call these push packs. It was a push pack distribution. The state of North Carolina sent these items to all schools across the state as a starter pack to ensure that schools that were going to be opening under Plan B had the items they needed for their designated holding spaces and for the nurses in their school district. And so Jennifer Corso, during her time with the health department and now having joined our team, has worked with our nurses and our warehousing staff to package those items and get those out to the schools. Those were all received in the month of August so that they would be on hand. And those items included handheld thermometers. The state provided 1 thermometer for every 100 students in our district, gowns, procedural masks, which are different than your standard disposable mask, and then a few face shields for that space as well. At the last board meeting, I did share that an additional allotment would be released upon a board vote for Plan B. That has been done, and I actually got communication from Jennifer today that those items should be received soon. They do have a standard allocation for each one of our schools, and so Jennifer and the nurse team will also work together to package those items with the warehouse team and get those shipped out to the schools for those designated holding spaces as well. So specifically looking at face coverings, the state sent us 312,000 reusable cloth face masks in packs of 5 for every single one of our staff members and students. Schools completed a survey for staff mask requests. Elementary and middle schools have received all of those requests, and high schools have been underway this week and should be wrapping up if they haven't already. Masks were also sent out to our schools in September based on each school's ADM, so that they have those on hand as well. Face shields, we have a generous donator in the community that has provided a face shield for every one of our certified teachers and TAs. As soon as we receive those, we will be sending those out to the schools so that they are available as well. And I want to make sure that everybody knows that reusable and disposable masks are in our PPE catalog, which I'll talk about here in just a second, for additional ordering as needed, because we know that we will have new staff members coming on board throughout the school year, and we may have new students joining us throughout the school year as well, and we will continue to provide that item to them as we go along. So presently, this is very small, and I do apologize for that on the TV. The items that are available in all of our schools today are listed here. We shared a spreadsheet with all of the schools last week so that they could see the quantities that were provided to them or that they specifically ordered, so they would have those available and could look to see if there was anything else that they would like to order. Schools requested some of the quantities based on doing their building walks. As I said, again, other items were shipped based on the standard startup numbers, based on building size or the number of full enrollment in the school, not just the number of students that will be returning to in-face instruction under Plan B. And so some of the items here, I just wanted to list through. If you've been out to one of our schools, you've seen the ThermoFast device, or you may have seen it at the education building for our live board meetings. That has been provided for all of our staff screening. We've talked about hand sanitizer stands, sanitizer to go in those. One of the requirements in the toolkits is to have classroom-sized sanitizer available. And so all schools received a standard shipment of 120 bottles to get them started. Again, that is an item that is in the catalog that I'll show you here in just a minute, that schools can order on an as-needed basis to ensure that that stock stays where it needs to be. We talked a lot about the floor markers. You've seen in some of the pictures from our principals this evening about floor tape. Plexiglass barriers were installed, one in each of our school buildings, for there to be an individual in the front office during this time to be able to screen visitors as they come in. We also have mobile plexiglass shields that were ordered as part of one of the initial orders that we did back in April or May to have those on hand, that staff that maybe does not have a face shield could stand behind to do screenings. Facial tissues is another one of those items that was required in the toolkit to be in every classroom. For a standard shipment to ensure they had what they needed, 300 individual boxes were shipped to every school, so they would have a supply to get them started. Disinfectant is an item that is available for all schools. The disinfectant that we're using is actually one that we've been using for quite some time. Gloves, of course, continue to be available. This is something that our custodians and our schools have had access to, will continue to be available for ordering as needed. We talked about the cloth masks, disposable masks, and then also procedural masks, which are specific for that designated holding space being available. They've also all been sent to schools. Infrared handheld thermometers, electrostatic sprayers, that's one for every elementary school and middle school, and 2 for each high school, so that the athletic programs specifically have a unit to be able to take care of their surfaces. Spray bottles and nozzles for the disinfectant, based on each of the building's schematics for the number of rooms, so the number of bottles that they need. Safety goggles and face shields. So one of the questions may be, where are you able to order some of these items? So if you go onto our district website and you go to departments and you select operations, on the left-hand menu, you will see a drop-down for our Idlewild warehouse. And under there, you'll see a number of catalogs that have always been available for school administrators and secretaries to be able to order supplies for their school. And now, additionally, they have the PPE or COVID catalog, where they can order any of these items that they may need on an ongoing basis. And all of these items are being purchased at the district level rather than taking any school funds to purchase the items that these schools need on a daily basis. So schools can visit this catalog or they can print it to have to reference at any time they need something. We have encouraged principals and custodial staff to establish PAR levels. That's not something that any of us know exactly what it needs to be right now. And that is why you see a lot of these items being shipped out to the schools so that they have a mass quantity available. And as we start to have students come back into the buildings, they'll be able to continue to order these things and monitor their usage to ensure that they keep that supply going, and we'll always ensure that that's available to them. On this slide, there's just a small little snippet. Again, it's probably small in the presentation view for Cable 2. But this is just a small snippet of the items. It gives principals, secretaries, and custodial staff a little bit of a description in what the item is, how the item comes packaged, and potentially the area that it may be used for. And it also provides the budget code, again, so that those funds are not coming from the school. You can see the purchase price over there listed as 0 for all of our school groups. And I've also included a link in the very bottom left-hand corner of this slide for you this evening, in case you want to click and take you directly to the PPE catalog. So at this time, do you have any questions about this information?
Board Member Montsinger, I think, had a hand up. Is that correct, Ms. Montsinger?
Yeah, yes, I wanted to ask, what is the turnaround time likely to be for ordering more supplies?
Are you speaking to a school ordering the supply and it coming from the warehouse?
Exactly. So, right.
Sure.
So if you, yeah.
So the standard process, so the school will put in a requisition. That requisition gets approved and it goes immediately to the warehouse for the staff there to pull those items from the stock. And typically those items, are going out either the next day or a 2-day turnaround. If for some reason there was an urgent need, each of our schools, our zones, have a facility specialist that would be able to be contacted. So if for some reason they ran through a supply, we would be able to probably go to the warehouse and get that for them and get that out. But in those situations, you're looking at 1 to 2 days.
Okay, so you expect to have enough in the warehouse that that schools will not be running out of supplies, is that correct?
Yes, and just to give you an example, for the hand sanitizer for the classrooms, even though we've already shipped out 120 for all of our schools, when we shipped those out, we went ahead and turned right back around and ordered another shipment to have on hand, because we know that those orders will begin as soon as our students start to come back in the classroom and teachers establish how much they'll be going through.
Okay, and those masks, everybody will be given 5 masks, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. They come in, they're reusable cloth masks. They come in a pack of 5, and that's for every staff member and every student.
Okay, thank you.
Board Member Burke, I think you had a hand up, is that correct?
Yes, Chair Parker. I wanted to ask about the face shields. You said that a generous donor would be providing face shields to all of our certified employees. And I'm wondering if we could also provide face shields for our instructional assistants as well, because they will be coming into contact with all of our students and our specialists as well. Is that possible?
Yes, so the donation is for any individual in our district that is classified as a certified staff member, and then all of our teacher assistants as well. And so I have been working with Nicolette Grant to ensure that we've captured all of those individuals that are out there working in the classrooms with our students that fall in those 2 categories.
And some of our specialists may not be certified. Will they be provided face shields as well?
I can look into that for if there's a specific position that we're maybe not thinking about. I don't want to misspeak. I know that Exceptional Children also has already purchased some face shields, so there's quite a bit of coverage there as well. But I can look into that to see if there's a difference between instructional assistant versus teaching assistant to ensure that we have all of that captured.
Thank you.
Okay. And I had one question, and you alluded to this back earlier in the first presentation, but I think with some of our contract cleaners, that they may have, during the time that we are not in the buildings, that they may not have their staff in our buildings. So you had said that you may come back to us with some additional hours. When should we expect those contract cleaners back in the buildings as they were prior to us being having students not be in the building?
So our contracted service process is the same right now as it has been. The additional piece that will be coming to you with in November is one of the things that we looked at back in the beginning of making the request for the CARES funds was for an additional custodial staff member. And staffing tends to be somewhat of a challenge for various positions for various reasons. And so in lieu of an additional person, we know that one of the big things right now is sweeping and mopping of our classrooms on a daily basis, especially since we're going to have so many kids eating in the classrooms. And in some of our previous scope of work, it was spot mopping or spot sweeping, not a daily mopping and sweeping. And so we are working with those contract services right now to redefine that language and come back to you for a updated scope of work in November.
Okay, I just wanted, I had heard just that some of the contract cleaners weren't in the buildings anymore due to layoffs, or maybe that is where we are having problems staffing, perhaps, that you said. But I just wanted to make sure that we don't, have any buildings that are, grossly underrepresented with the cleaning staff, so that
Of course.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions that anyone has? All right. Well, we will move on to the thank you, Ms. Richards, and also thank you, Ms. McManus, for your presentation. Dr. Hairston, we'll let you go into the Safer School opening, the CDC update.
Certainly, and with Chair Parker, I wanted to clarify a couple of things. One, I wanted to make sure everyone knew that Val Young, with the president of the FCAE, did call yesterday and ask for permission for teachers to be in front of the ed building, and according to board policy, after hours, they do have a right to be out there. So I just wanted everybody to know that that was a planned process, and we had planned to have the employees in the facility exit. We had almost 100 teachers, and we didn't want them caught up in traffic and become a danger. I just didn't want to send a message that we did not anticipate that. So we were expecting that.
Oh, yes, certainly. And I
okay.
would like to just add to that, Dr. Hairston, that we recognize that, and we are glad that they're voicing their concerns. So
right. Okay. Thank you. So I want to share with you. Hopefully, I can get this pulled up here for you. This is the information that we received from our health department. Is that visible out there, Ms. Parker?
yes, it is visible. If it could, I don't know whether you can make it a little larger. Everybody doesn't have as old eyes as I do, but yeah, that's better there.
All right. Okay.
Thank you.
As Winston-Salem Forsyth Board considers how to safely reopen buildings and in-person services, the CDC offers updated considerations for mitigation strategies that K-12 school administrators can use to help protect students, teachers, and staff and slow the spread of COVID-19. The Forsyth County Department of Health has recommended that the school board use the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention guidance for reopening, but has not recommended a specific reopening plan, since that is board action. At the school board's request, the Department of Health, our Department of Health, is providing county-level data for two primary metrics and a mitigation strategy. The number of new COVID cases per 100,000, and you'll see that is, this is the first metric here, over a 14-day period, and the period of positive new COVID labs for the county's population over a 14-day period. And the CDC references these two metrics right here as measures for community burden, meaning that the school district has very little control over the number of new cases per 100,000 persons within 14 days and percentage of positive rates of positive cases test that are lended to self-positive or 14. These are community measures. The number of new cases per 100,000 over 14 days is calculated by adding the number of new cases for residents. And I want to take time to talk about this residents in our county. Oftentimes people will see metrics and they're not realizing that our epidemiologist, Dr. Miller, along with the staff over there, they go back and actually look at each metric and each indicator to ensure that we're referencing metrics for residents. They take these metrics for residents and they're divided by the 2018 county population and then multiplied by 100,000. So that's the first set of numbers that we do reference. When determining these metrics, Public Health uses the county's July 2018 Bureau of Census Population Estimate. This is to be consistent with both the CDC and the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, which use the population estimate because public health officials began calculating the statistics for this pandemic. They began calculating it before July 2019. The population, before the 2019 population estimates were released. So this right here is calculated, and oftentimes what happens with metrics, and again, having a mathematician, metrics can vary depending on people looking at the data from the outside. But when you're on the inside and you actually have the raw data, you can provide the reports that are more accurate and needed. Again, it is residents and it's over 14 days. So for example, if a teacher or a person just comes through our district and they stop and take a test and they live in another district, that report will go back to that particular district. And so we just need to be mindful. The percentage of COVID tests that are positive, which is the second metric, during the last 14 days is calculated by adding the number of new cases for county residents in the last 14 days and divided by the total number of new labs for county residents in the last 14 days, and then multiplied by 100, so we're getting a percentage. The metrics are configured every 7 days and go back as far as 14 days, so there is overlap. September 20th to October 3rd, and then September 27th to October 10th. The metrics are updated weekly and reported out every Tuesday. Again, there are 3 indicators promoted by the CDC, and first 2 being what we deem as community burden, and the next one, implementation of mitigation strategies. So this chart indicates that if we're consistent and we correctly use masks, we socially distance, we use hand hygiene and respiratory etiquette, clean and disinfect, use good contact tracing, schools also can adopt additional mitigating strategies. But if you implement all 5 with fidelity, then the lowest risk of transmission in schools exists. So again, when does the lowest transmission exist? The lowest transmission in schools exists when it's less than 5, and let's go back to the number of cases per 100,000, when they're less than 5, when the positivity rate is less than 3, and when you implement all 5 strategies. A lower risk of transmission exists when there are 5 to 20, or that would be 5 to 20 cases per 100,000. The rate is 3 to 5%. And of course, when we implement all 5 strategies. So this goes along a continuum. I'll take the top. We're a moderate range here when there are 20 to 49 cases per 100,000. We're at a higher risk when there are 50 and fewer or equal to 200. And when there's greater than 200, we're at a higher risk in this category. Second category of positivity, when there's less than 3%, we're at a lower risk. When we're 3 to less than 5%, we're at a lower risk of transmission. The lowest risk and lower risk. When we have a positivity rate of 5 to less than 8%, we're at a moderate risk in schools. When we have an 8% to equal to or less than 10% of community spread, we're at a higher risk. And when we have greater than 10% of community spread, we're at the highest risk. These metrics here can be determined, again, these are in-school measures. When we use all 5 of these mitigating strategies with fidelity, we can be at lower and lowest. When we are at 3 to 4, let's say we decide to only adopt 3 to 4, we will be at moderate risk. If we decide to adopt 1 to 2, we will be at a higher risk. And if we use no mitigating strategies, we're at a higher risk, the highest risk. And so some other mitigating strategies that can help us are cohorting students, which we talked about, adequate supplies, which we discussed at length, staggered scheduling, alternating schedules, visitors, preventing visitors from coming into the building, ventilation, which was mentioned, and I think Darryl wants to address that for a moment, physical barriers and communal spaces, and of course how we serve food. All of those keep us from being at the highest risk. But these are separate indicators with their own individual levels of ratings depending on how we implement. And the health department cannot measure the internal mitigating strategies. That's our job to do through audits. But the first 2, they do provide information. So we've seen these charts before, and the number of new cases per 100,000 population within 14 days in Forsyth County. These again are referred to community burden, measures of community burden. We have no control over them directly as a school district. We as citizens have control based on how we behave in public. And so at this time, the health department has sent us metrics, and they have indicated that we're at a higher risk, and higher risk all 3 weeks. And I'll go back up. Higher risk of transmission in schools, considering the 1 metric. The second metric that they send us is the percentage of tests that are positive during the last 14 days in Forsyth County. 9/20 through 10/03 was lower risk. The next week we were at a moderate risk. And the next week we were at a moderate risk. And that's if we did not implement any of the mitigation strategies. So the health department and the CDC guidance indicates that you must consider all three measures. You must consider the 100,000, the new cases per 100,000, must consider the positive rates in the county, and we have to consider our ability to implement the 5 mitigation strategies at a minimum. And so I'll pause there for any questions. Okay. So
I think
Yes.
board
this is-
member Watson, yeah, board member Watson, you had a question, sorry.
Yes, I have 2 questions. Can we go to the second slide or the third slide? I'm sorry, let's go up one more. This blue line, what does that represent versus the green line?
all 3 indicators should be included. So this is the percent of new versus the tests that have been provided. The percent is the tests that have been provided. This is the percent positive on this exit here. This is 14-day total labs.
Okay, so I'm looking at the highest blue line, right? And it seems to be getting close to 10. But the green is the green line is the positive and the 14 is the total. So that's how many labs we're doing.
So this is the number of labs close to 9,000. It's between 8,800 and 9,000. This is the total number of labs. This is the percentage of positive is the.
All right. So the positive is going up.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I had another question about the correct use of masks. And it seems to me that given that we will be giving every student what sounds like appropriate and approved masks, and that one of the mitigating issues seems to be the correct and consistent use of masks. Can we have a policy or really consider requiring students to wear correct masks?
Yes, ma'am. That would be at the will of the board. Absolutely. I think our board attorney has written some ARs around masking that she would present Tuesday night. Mm-hmm.
I feel, we've had some difficult conversations around that and about requiring a certain quality of mask being worn. And I just want to make sure that we're being consistent about that masks have to be over your nose, they have to cover your mouth, they have to be 2 layers, they have to be appropriate and can't just be a gaiter or a bandana. So, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Board member Bramer, I think you have a hand up.
I do. Looking at those numbers, looking at the same, the percentage of the 9,000 cases, are they saying that the trend is to continue up, which, it looks like to me it's going to continue up at a pretty steep pace?
Well, I think the response always is these are community measures for community burden. It just depends on how committed our community becomes around using the same strategies in the community, social distancing, masking, numbers in restaurants and those kinds of things. So I think it's hard to predict. I think we can see that if people don't change behaviors, the numbers won't change. But that depends on
I think we know that kids every year are the big transmitters of the flu. So if they are the big transmitters of the flu, would it go to say that even if we try our very best, it's still slightly risky for kids?
I couldn't comment on that. I just do know that the data they gave us behind students is here. That's the death rates. But we know that positivity rates for students who are less than 14 as of October 17th might be the fact that they're not exposed and they're at home. So I couldn't speculate on the flu. So, Ms. Parker.
Board Member Kaplan, I think you have a hand up.
Yes, thank you. So looking at what is going on in our community and also remembering the metrics that we had set at, I believe, less than 5 or less, I think it's probably pretty appropriate to have a conversation about the timeline of opening our schools and pretty much what we have talked about. Would you all like to have some discussion about that, considering we're at 6.8 now?
Yes.
Or Dr. Harrison, were you
Or you have a
were you
recommendation?
going to go on and finish that presentation and then we can have discussion, or how would you like to proceed with that? I can do it either way.
So at this point, we just need, we again need a direction from you all. Students are to return Monday, and we needed direction based on the metrics that are there, the information presented this evening, or whether we need to come back in a few weeks and we have some proposals if we're going to come back. But we do need to let parents know right away what your choices are. So we are prepared to hear direction from you all.
So are we allowed to make a motion in a subcommittee?
Yes,
You
we can make a motion coming out of this subcommittee to present to the full board for a vote. Yes, certainly.
Okay, so.
And do we have enough members of the board here to make an actual quorum?
We do. We have a quorum for this committee.
And
So
can
I
we
would
do
like
that?
to make,
So, for the actual board.
Ask one question before you do that, Elizabeth. So, Dr. Harrison, if we have a quorum of board members here at this committee, can we do that and then it goes to the full board, or?
I don't pretend to be an attorney, and I hope she doesn't pretend to be a superintendent. So let's go to Deion Jenkins.
That sounds like a plan.
Thank you, yes. So you can amend the agenda to make a motion tonight as the committee to take some action and then move it to the full board, but you cannot have a full board meeting tonight because it was not noticed in that regard. So you would need to have a special called board meeting to vote as the full board.
So we as a committee can make a recommendation to take to the full board next Tuesday night, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Or before then, if you'd like to have a special call.
Yeah, we'd like to have, if it's a change in the direction, we'd like to have a call board meeting Thursday because parents do need to be noticed.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. So now, Elizabeth, I will allow you to make a motion now that we have all that clear.
Elizabeth,
you're muted.
You're muted, ma'am.
You're muted. I'm sorry.
do I first need to I'm going to make two motions. The first motion is that we amend the agenda to have a vote.
And I second that.
Okay. Any discussion on amending the agenda? Okay.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Andrea Bramer?
Yes.
Deanna Kaplan?
Yes.
Dana Jones? And Elizabeth Motzinger?
Yes.
Motion passes.
And then I would like to make a motion that we delay the introduction of more students into school for 2 weeks while we monitor these guidelines from the CDC.
I second that. This is Board Member Kaplan.
Second.
Okay. So any discussion on the motion?
Okay.
I just say that I think that's a good plan. So, Dr. Harrison, do you want to take the vote?
Chairman Parker?
Yes.
Andrea Bramer?
Yes.
Deanna Kaplan?
Yes.
Elizabeth Motzinger?
Yes.
Dana Jones? And so, Ms. Parker, what we would do based on this vote is we'd arrange for a call board meeting Thursday. I really would like to notify parents of our pre-K tonight so they would know Monday. that we'll be voting Thursday, but, with anticipation of a delay, we'll word it so it's not a firm vote, but so that people know we're looking at a delay, so they can get arrangements for the baby. And then we would need to have a call board meeting on November 5th, which is 2 weeks out from Thursday, to look at the metrics at that time.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. That
All right.
sounds like a plan. So we will go forward with that plan. So
Yes,
you
ma'am.
all will let us know a time, and of course that will be advertised to the public as to our call board meeting on Thursday, correct?
Both meetings at 5 o'clock, if that's permissible, accommodate working parents, and I probably, to be honest, when we have these call meetings around this, we're not required to take public comment, but I would recommend we allow public comment.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I guess Chair Woodbury, I suppose that would be a final call on yours, but
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And Dr. Harrison, do you have anything else for anything else for the committee?
I just wanted to clarify, because I'm getting text messages, and I know, we're not supposed to get all these text messages during meetings, but I did want to clarify again, teachers did ask for permission to be out there today. We received information through our Jonathan Wilson, who works with our Sheriff's Department, or our deputies, that there was a plan for counter protest and no licenses or anything. And so I did want to make sure that we were being safe. So I want to clarify that at no point that we feel that a teacher demonstration, because we were noted, no problem would be a problem, but we did feel a counter protest will cause us challenges. So I did want to make sure I was clear on that, and that we thank our teachers for letting us know a day in advance, and always appreciate their rights to demonstrate and let us know how they're feeling.
Okay, and Dr. Harrison, I know we had teachers, elementary teachers coming back today.
Yeah.
And so will this plan delay staff being in buildings for another 2 weeks until we look at the metrics, or?
No, teachers have isolated classrooms, no more than 2 to a classroom in most parts. So we brought staff back to do the training and prepare for children. Principals actually need their staff in the building. So that is not a recommendation. However, we can discuss that on Thursday. But right now, we've asked staff to report to buildings on time, to check in, as you all have done today, to remain in their classroom, socially distance, wear their mask, and there are no students. So we don't feel that at this time there needs to be an adjustment in their schedule, only the student schedule.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anything else from any of the committee members or board members?
Just want to remind everybody of our town hall meeting in 3 minutes in Spanish, and you do have to log totally off as soon as this meeting is over so we can get to that next opportunity. Thank you.
All right, great. Well, thank you to everyone who has joined us tonight, as well as to all the staff and board members, and thank you, staff, for your presentations. And we will have a called meeting on Thursday to discuss this motion. So thank you very much. Everybody have a wonderful evening.
I think
Can I say one thing before
you'll have to
Yes.
call for. I think you'll have to call for a motion to adjourn, Board Member Parker.
I do. Sorry. Thank you, Chair Woodbury is trying to get people out of here for the other one. Do I have a motion to adjourn? But Elizabeth, I think you want to say something, so I'll let you go ahead. And
I
say
just wanted to say one thing, that as this first public meeting after our superintendent has announced that she is returning home to live with the community she had grown up in and loved, where her family is, where her husband is, I just want to publicly say that we wish her every single happiness in the world. And although we will miss her terribly and are really grateful for all she's brought to this district, I think every board member joins me in wanting you to be ridiculously happy when you return home.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes. All right.
And with that, I will make a motion to adjourn.
All right. Thank you. And that's very true. Do I have a second?
Second, Kaplan.
All right. All in favor, let it be known by aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We
All
have
right.
1 minute.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Now, everyone, thank you and have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.